Hello, this HighByte Intelligence Hub video covers data exchange with AWS services. There are a few configurable options that Intelligence Hub provides to exchange data with AWS. Some of those are listed here. One option is sending bulk data, often in files, to AWS S3, a data lake. Another option is sending data to AWS SiteWise. And this Intelligence Hub connection is what we'll focus on in this video. And it has the capability not only to send data, but also to create structure in SiteWise assets and measurements. A final option depicted here is data exchange with AWS IoT Core using MQTT. And in that scenario, Intelligence Hub can send and obtain, publish and subscribe data with IoT Core. So there's multiple options to send and obtain data from AWS services, and the data exchange approach selected is of course dictated by the specific use case. Today we'll take a look at a use case. In this scenario, we're obtaining data from a well field, wells and well pads in a well field, and that data is being obtained by Ignition SCADA, KEP Server EX OPC server, and Aviva Pi data historian. So what we're doing is obtaining data from these disparate sources for different wells and well pads and normalizing that data, the process data in a model, and then sending that data to SiteWise to an asset hierarchy that we define in SiteWise. So let's take a look at Intelligence Hub and how we do that. We'll start with a pipeline. So this pipeline is running every minute. We can of course determine the polling interval. We're querying an Intelligence Hub namespace to get asset context, and we'll take a look at that namespace in a moment. We have an array of data, we break it up, and then we define the SiteWise payload, the specific structure that we want to define, and then send the data to SiteWise using a SiteWise connection. So let's take a look at how we built this solution, starting with the connections. We have connections to Ignition using the standard configurable Intelligence Hub Ignition module connection that installs a module in Ignition. We connect securely, and then we can browse tag providers, and we've already created a solution, a connection here where we can obtain data for a well, and you can see that here. So obtaining that tag data from Ignition. We also have a connection with Pi, and we securely connect to Pi. In this case, we're using the Intelligence Hub connection agent that interfaces with Pi using the AF Asset Framework SDK. And I'm going to query my Pi database by asset ID, and I parameterize that. And here we can see, in this case, we're obtaining data for a well pad. And then finally, our connection to KEP Server EX, the OPC server. So we establish where is the OPC server, connect securely. We can browse the tags. I've already done that and created some connections. And here we have a branch read for a specific well, and you can see the tags that are being obtained there. So that's how we obtain the data. We want to normalize the data in a model. I've defined a model for the wells, and you can see here the different attributes and the data types described and whether or not the data is required. We map the connection inputs to the model in an instance, and here you can see those model attributes, and we've already mapped the data, and you can see it here. And the way that we do that is using a reference pane. So I say I want to select a connection input, and maybe I want to focus on the data coming from Pi for my wells. And here I can see the data that's being returned for a specific element ID, total power. And then, so what I would do is I just map this. I've already done that, of course, but I just map it in here and create a connection. What I've done in some of these connections is I'm using JavaScript to manipulate the data, format the data. I'm also using the initialization block here to obtain data from an API that obtains energy cost information. And that's how I'm computing my power consumption cost here with a little JavaScript and a connection input. So those are just some options that can be performed with instances. What we want to do is also get asset context. So what I did here is I described the asset structure using Intelligence Hub namespaces, and then for like a given well, I can do a test read, and we can see, the data that's being obtained for that well. That's just in a test mode, but optimal, ultimately, what we want to do is we want to obtain this data, in the case of this pipeline solution, every minute and send that to SiteWise. So just bringing us back to the pipeline, we're obtaining, the data via a smart query from the namespace for all the well pads and all the wells. And ultimately, we're sending that data to SiteWise. Let's take a look at my SiteWise connection. So I have created a connection to SiteWise securely, and this is my output. And incidentally, I have an output that was used to create the models, create the asset hierarchy. I've already done that. This is my output that is updating the measurements in SiteWise, and you see this is completely parameterized. So I have just one connection output. I'm pushing all of the data through there, and I get my hierarchy identifier, my asset name, my model name, and populate SiteWise. So let's take a look at how that looks. So you can see here I have that same structure that I've defined in Intelligence Hub is being pushed to SiteWise, and then my process data is being written to measurements that were created, based on the data coming from Intelligence Hub. They're being updated every minute, and then you can see the values as they're being updated. So that's an example solution, just one of many solutions that can be created exchanging data between Intelligence Hub and AWS services. In this case, in this simple demo, we chose to populate SiteWise, and we're sending data to SiteWise, also creating the structure in SiteWise with a standard configurable Intelligence Hub connection to AWS SiteWise. Thank you for your time. We appreciate it.